Welcome, everyone, to our webinar today with Dr. Georgette Constantinou. I want to let you know as we get started that this is being recorded. For those of you that might have little ones at your feet, it is being recorded, and it will be up about 1 week after it's recorded. And if you have questions as we get started here, in the upper left-hand side of your screen, there's a question mark, and you click on that, and you can type questions in to Dr. Constantinou, and she will answer them as they come in. There's a lot of you here with us today, so she may not be able to get to all the questions, but she will look them over and hopefully be able to get to as many as she's able to. So, and before we begin, I really want to thank Leadership 100. They are tremendous at supporting us and helping us to offer these to you at no charge, and it's through their support that our office exists and that we're able to offer programs like this to you. So we'd like to welcome today Dr. Georgette Constantinou, the Administrative Director of the Division of Pediatric Psychiatry and Psychology, Child Neurology, and Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics at Akron Children's Hospital. That's a mouthful. Dr. Constantinou received her BA from Vassar College in 1970 and her MA and Ph.D. degrees from the Ohio State University in 72 and 73. As an associate professor of psychology at Northeastern Ohio Medical University, she has served as faculty since 1978. She's an active speaker and trainer on the local, regional, national, and international levels. She appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show in October 1997. Dr. Constantinou advocates for the mental health needs of children and their families in the area of traumatized children and children coping with the demands of chronic medical illnesses and injuries. And she has been such an asset to our office and to our church as a faithful Orthodox Christian in Akron, Ohio. And we welcome you today, Dr. Constantinou.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here today. So this afternoon we're going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite subjects, which is how to help our children become more resilient. As Melissa said, if you have a question, just feel free to write it, and I'll look them over as we're moving along and try to work them into my talk. So as Melissa told you, I'm a pediatric psychologist. I've been here at Akron Children's for 35 years, and frankly, I would say that every time I think I've seen it all, I see the next one. So that perspective, and being the mother of 2 young adult children, Alexandra, age 22, and Theo, age 28, and having taught Sunday school for the last 25 years, I think I've gotten a chance to get to know our kids and to know what's on their minds. So I'm not going to try to cover that today, but to give you as parents some tips about how can we help our children. What is it that we can do to make them successful in this world? So I'm going to take a step back for a moment and just talk about that world. So as Orthodox faithful, we have the world of our faith, which should be the center of our lives, and most of the time it is. But there are things outside of the faith that can get in the way of our kids. So what are those stressors that we need to think about? The most obvious one is changes in family structure over the years. No longer are both parents together, and first of all, together. The divorce rate remains high, even if that's not true in our own households. Our children know families where there have been divorce, remarriage, step-parenting, etc., so blended families, and they try to make sense of that. The second thing is that moms are back in the workforce. This was true during World War II, and then things got quiet for a few generations, but many, many mothers are working and working outside of the home, which then brings in issues like who's watching the children, childcare issues that we have to address. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and have been for a very long time, is that we have overscheduled ourselves and our children to death. I used to roll my eyes when children would come up to me, still do in Sunday school, and give me a pass that says, my mom's picking me up, I have a soccer game. I can't be there today, I have a hockey game. And when my own kids were playing soccer, we simply didn't go to the Sunday games. We said, you know, that's our church day. We don't do that. And I got a lot of eye rolls from some of the coaches, but I think they got the point. even in the time that I have, the 28 years since my son was an infant, the boom, the explosion in the electronic media, where I have families asking me if 8-year-olds can have a Facebook page, if they can have a telephone, not just a phone, but the fanciest possible phone, is very, very worrisome to me, because I think that our electronics have moved so much farther past the ethics behind using them. So I now give talks about cyberbullying, and if you don't know what that means, it means bullying that used to occur face-to-face that now occurs with a click of a finger. And 25 people or 50 people know what we think of Susie. Drug and alcohol abuse, not new. I'm a product of the 60s, not new, but rampant, and much more serious abuse than we knew before. Talk a moment about the media. I watched a little bit of MTV the other day to see Beyonce very, very, very seductively singing with her little 2-year-old daughter in the audience, and thought, okay, this is a mom. What message is she giving? So how do we talk to our kids about sexuality when it's rampant everywhere? We can't take a step away from the news without knowing that we're bombarded with cultures of violence, whether it be violence in war, violence in our inner cities, what's going on, and our kids are exposed and wondering, where is this coming from? We have a peaceful religion. We have a religion of love. We have a religion of hope. But here comes this outside world. How do we help kids make sense of that? And then just the concept of being stressed, too much on your mind, too much to do, too many demands, all these things working together. So to me, that's the context in which I want to say we can't pull our children out and put them in a bubble. How do we teach them to cope with the demands of everyday life? We have stressors, deaths of a parent, illness, chronic disease, chronic medical disease. I work in a children's hospital. This is our everyday occurrence. How do we help our kids learn and come forward and be stronger? That's what resilience means. So in preparation for the clergy laity, I worked with Presbytera Carrie Pappas to put together a definition of resilience that is an orthodox definition. We haven't published it, we haven't done anything with it, but it kind of puts a spin on what is resilience. And so I'm going to tell you that it's our God-given inner capacity that when we nurture it, we facilitate it, and it's supported by others, particularly in our faith community, and by the grace of God, lets every member of the family and the family unit successfully meet life's challenges with faith and hope. So it's what is it that we do that helps us push forward, that helps us get through some of the tougher moments in life. One of the things that we have here at Akron Children's Hospital is an emergency room where we have put programming there. It's called our Psychiatric Intake Response Center, and it runs all day long, all night long, 365 days a year. I want to look at my board and tell you that yesterday we saw 7 kids there, all of whom were feeling hopeless and desperate. And as school continues, those numbers will climb. What do those kids have in common? They don't have a lot of hope. They don't have a lot of strategies. They feel like they're at the end of the line, and their families bring them to us. So what are the protective factors about resilience? The first one is what we do best, I think, in the Orthodox community. We build positive social connections with one another. We connect, and we connect around a common goal, which is to worship the Lord. We also need to give our children skills and competence. They're not going to make it in this world if we do it for them. I think that I'm seeing a very sheltered group of kids coming forward whose mom and dad don't want them to have a C on a test. They don't want them to fail anything. They want them to be the best soccer player. Well, that's quite a tall order. The way you do something, and I say this to my own children, is you practice, you get better at it, you get better at it, you get better at it. The other protective factors are setting the bar high. Instead of bringing the bar down, we need to keep taking it up to the place at which we can achieve. So if I'm talking to a child who has a math learning disability, I might not be telling him that he should be a mathematician when he grows up, but I certainly want to help him get better at what he doesn't do very well. Another thing that is an external protective factor in a huge way is giving to others. And I think as Orthodox Christians, we do this best. Our festival is coming up in a few weeks at our church, and I can tell you that people have banded together around a common cause to make their kolorakia, to do their spanakopoulos, to figure out who's going to serve. And we're doing this and pulling it off because we're all working with one another. The final factor is optimism and hope. Someone said to me today how very different I am from one of my colleagues. And the difference is I always choose to look at life optimistically and hopefully. And that's something that our faith allows us to do. The resurrection is the pinnacle of hope, and hope in this life, hope in the afterlife. And I believe that as Orthodox Christians, we are uniquely poised to have all of these external protective factors together. The other thing that we know about children who are resilient is that children themselves are hardwired to connect with people. From the time an infant is born, they're looking for their parent. They're looking for the source of love, the source of sustenance. So children are hardwired to connect with people, not with machines, and I want to emphasize that, but with other human beings. And so when you say to someone, I'm interested in you, I'm a professional therapist. When I sit down, I turn off my phone, I put everything away, and I just look at someone and say, I'm here to help you. How can I help you? That message is very powerful. And then if my phone rings and kids will look at me and say, aren't you going to answer the phone? I say, no, this is your time and you're my priority. So I want to say that again, that we need to make sure that our children have the opportunity to make those real connections. We also know that kids thrive in resilient communities that are the word authoritative. Now that's not authoritarian, it's authoritative. And what does that mean? Again, think about your own church community. An authoritative community is that group of people who are committed to one another over time and who model and pass on part of what it means to be a good person and to have a good life. Think about your church coffee hour and think about how many people are coming up to you and saying, oh, you've been out of town, I missed you, how are you? To your children, sometimes our children are thinking, do I have to shake one more person's hand or have my little cheeks pinched? But you'll see as they grow that they really notice that people care about them and that people connect with them. So I'm going to ask for the first slide so that all of you can see from where I'm taking the materials that we're going to be talking about. It comes from a pediatrician in Philadelphia, Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg, who has written a powerful book called A Parent's Guide to Building Resilience in Children and Teens, Giving Your Child Roots and Wings. I also have his website on there, fosteringresilience.com, and I'm going to ask for the next slide so that you can see this website. It is a storehouse for parents and community members of all kinds of really good tips about how to build resilience. So I want you to just have that. I know that this webinar will be available to you in a week or so, so it should be in the corner next to me. If not, we can repeat that as we get toward the end. Okay, so Dr. Ginsburg is going to be very pleased that I'm selling his books and making his materials available, but I think he's not in it for the money. I think he's in it to really help us raise resilient kids. Okay, so he talks about this phrase, the greatest gift. And I'll ask you to put that one up if you would. So the greatest gift that we can give to our children is to be the best role models for them that we can, to live a balanced life and to demonstrate to them that when life, which inevitably offers us a challenge, which it will, we take the steps we need to get back on track. If you don't think our kids are looking at us as role models, watch the negative behaviors of ours that they copy. You need to remember that they're looking to us to teach them what's life all about and to teach them how to cope. So let's put up the 7 C's. Ginsburg calls them the essential building blocks. And again, these are on his website for you to go back and look at again. but they are, and I'm going to do them one at a time so you don't have to worry about copying them down. They are competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. So let's unpackage this bundle and take them kind of one at a time. I apologize for any noise I'm making as I turn my own pages. Let me say a couple things before doing the C's, which is the two bottom lines that he talks about. The first bottom line is, and I think we all know this, but we need to be reminded, children and us, we live up or down to the expectations that we set for them. Our children live up or down to the expectations that we set for them. A comment I hear a lot about my own kids is that they make eye contact, and I heard this even when they were young teenagers. They make eye contact, they extend your hand, and they shake it. And I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, Georgette, your kids shake people's hands and they make eye contact. That's so unusual." And what I say to them is, you don't think they were born that way, do you? You don't think this isn't a conversation we had repeatedly practiced in our church coffee hour of when someone speaks to you, you look at them. When you meet a new person, you extend your hand. So again, that living up and down to the expectations that are set. I worry that a lot of families, sorry, I think I did something to cut myself off. I apologize for that. A lot of families say, "Oh, I can't get him to do that. Oh," and they kind of make excuses instead of saying, "I need to set the bar. My child will do what I expect them to do most times." They also need to have adults, our children need to have adults who believe in them unconditionally. "I believe you can do this." And who hold them to the highest expectations, and you're not going to hear me say of academic performance or athletic performance, but of these things: being compassionate, being generous, and being creative. Being compassionate, caring for other people, being generous of their time and of themselves, and being creative. And again, this isn't the doctor, the lawyer, or the nurse. It's what is it I expect of you as a human being, because everything else is just what you do to earn your living. So when we model resilient strategies for our children, when we show them what we do when we get stressed, when we talk to them about having a huge suitcase full of things to relieve stress, and then we use them, they start to understand that, yeah, that's how my mom calms herself down. Or that's how my dad, my husband is a gardener who loves to garden, that's what he does when it's been a long day or it's been an exhausting week. Not click on my little cell phone, not get on Facebook to chat to people who I don't even know, but real things, going to church every Sunday, participating in Sunday school, serving at the bazaar, doing whatever it is that you need to do to be generous. So now back to our 7 C's. The first one is competence. And what does competent mean? It means, can I do the job? Do I have the ability to handle a situation effectively? We give kids the opportunity to develop skills, whatever that skill might be. If that skill is babysitting, if that skill is raking leaves, if that skill is taking care of a yaya and papu, and not doing it for them. When Melissa talked about me being on Oprah Winfrey, she didn't tell you what the theme was. It was doing chores. I expected my children to do chores at home. And my children have 6 years age difference between them. So my son's chores were different than my daughter's chores. And the rule in my home was, I'm happy to do the laundry for you. You have to bring it to the laundry room, which is down in the lower level. And when you're old enough, I'm going to teach you how to do it too, because one day you're not going to be living with me and you'll have clothes that need to be washed, so let's develop this skill. My son, who is 28, can do a better job ironing a shirt than I ever could. Well, not a skill that developed at 28. It's a skill that developed as he was growing up in our house. So we want to be sure not to overprotect our kids so much that we jump in and do it for them. We want them to make mistakes. We want to help correct their mistakes in a kind and gentle way, but we want them to learn how to be competent. Competence comes from real experiences. So what I say is, if you're baking with your daughter and you want the perfect chocolate chip cookie, bake them yourself. If you want to teach your daughter or son how to make a batch of chocolate chip cookies, you may have a bad batch. They might burn. What's the lesson there? What do we do next time? How do we fix it? This is how kids learn competence, by trial and error, by making mistakes. Now, some mistakes, as I call them, are life-altering mistakes. So we're not going to let our children learn competence by doing risk-taking behaviors. But we want kids to develop their strengths, to learn the skills of being successful. Again, I'll use an example. My son's probably going to shoot me for all these examples, but I remember him bringing me a paper one day on a beautiful, warm, sunny day, saying, well, what do you think of this, Mom? I believe he was a 5th or 6th grader. And I said, well, Theo, why? What grade were you hoping for? And he said, an A. And I said, well, I'm not your teacher, but this looks like a C paper to me. If you want an A, stick around and I can give you some thoughts and we can look at it together and you can rewrite it. If you want to go outside, there's the door, you decide. I'm happy to tell you he stuck around. But I wasn't going to say great job on what was an average job. And I think we've gotten too much of fabulous job. I'm always happy to say that's a good try. Unless I don't even think it's a good try. If you didn't put your heart in it and you just kind of haphazardly handed something in, I would say, do you think you can do better than this? What do you think? What's your thought? You want children to develop the ability to make judgments for themselves. That's the goal. As Ginsburg says, we want to give our children roots and wings. Roots so they know that they're grounded in our love, and wings so they have what it takes to go out and be successful. We want to empower them to make decisions at ages that are appropriate for them. So that's the first skill, competence. The second C is confidence. We all know children who are really confident as opposed to kids who play at being confident. And that confident kid knows that they can navigate their world, knows that they can think outside of the box, and is ready to accept the challenges that come their way and to recover from a blip. So true confidence comes from our own ability to know that we can do something because we have the competence, the skills to do it. And we want to give kids opportunities to do that in a real life situations, not to do it for them. So we talk a lot, and the word self-concept is used, self-esteem, self-concept. And I think somehow we psychologists have gotten people to think this is something we buy for people. Self-confidence comes from, and esteem comes from something I do and do well. And then it's like having chips in the bank. Look, I did something well. People liked it. Let me do it again. So confidence comes when you praise people honestly about their achievements, and you don't give praise that is inauthentic. You don't give praise that's inauthentic. On the other hand, you don't push a kid to do something that they realistically could never handle, because then you've set them up for an unnecessary failure. Okay. We've talked about competence, we've talked about confidence, now we're going to talk about connection. And this is my favorite one, because we Orthodox Christians do this all the time. So our close ties to our family and our close ties to our community help us have a huge sense of security. Security that people love us unconditionally, that we belong, and that there's a place to go. And what's the opposite side of this? Is that we're not tempted so much to go down an alternative path to find love and attention, because we have it from the people that surround us. What does this mean? It means our families are our central force. They're the guiding principle in our life, and our family is embedded in our faith. And it tells you that we belong to a wider world, the world of our family, the world of our church, the world of our nona and nona, our extended family, our yayas and papus, if they're alive and available to us, and we're safe in that world. It's a huge gift that we have to give. The next C is connection. And connection is that sense of physical safety and emotional security that we build within our own homes. We let all emotions come out. Now, I want to underscore what I'm saying there. Not in a negative way that is insulting or is swearing. But if someone's unhappy, they can tell you that they're unhappy. It's about how they do it. So kids can feel comfortable with whatever feelings they have. They don't have to be happy-go-lucky every day. That's not even realistic for us, any of us. But can we talk about something that we don't like? A famous phrase one of my children said to me one day is, "I'm really unhappy with you. You're making a really bad decision." About them, of course. And I said, "I'm sorry. That's your ability. You know, I'm not offended. I'll stand by my decision. You're welcome to be unhappy about it." So it's allowing for all feelings. We decide as households, how do we express feelings? If you take my best crystal glass and you shatter it on the ground because you're mad at me, that's not an acceptable expression of emotion. I'm okay with the emotion. I'm just not okay with how you did it. And can we have conflicts and still love each other? Of course we can. What's important? What's important is that we respect each other when we have a conflict, that we don't say things that are harsh and that we don't mean. And how are we going to help our kids to do this? We're going to model it for them. If you don't think that our kids watch us as husbands and wives and how we do our conflicts, you're wrong. They're looking all the time. They're looking all the time at how are mom and dad going to resolve this one? And I'm not necessarily interested in every family having open warfare around the kitchen table on a Sunday. But I am interested in you coming back to kids when the adults have worked through something and saying, you know, Daddy and I talked about this. This is something, well, what'd you say? Well, so these are some grown-up conversations. It's really not for kids to know about, but know that we worked through it. We talked about it, we took a walk, we had a cup of coffee, we worked through it. Because that unresolved conflict doesn't help them to know, how am I going to have a conflict, how am I going to resolve it if a teacher tells me that I'm being disrespectful? What about if somebody calls me a name at school? What about if I don't want to do the assignment that was given to me? How are we going to work all this through? I want to, under connection, to say one more thing. We are losing our connections in our homes. I'm a strong advocate for put the computers away, put the cell phones away, put them in a basket, don't take them to bed with you, and have safe time at home where the family is just the family, with nothing electronic around it. My rule in my household was no phone calls during dinner, no TV on during dinner, and we sit and we talk. I'd rather have 10 minutes of that where we're really connecting than half an hour with everybody at their machines. So we want to do that. Another one of the C's is character. And we have a whole program here at Children's Hospital called Character Counts, because we want to enhance children building values. Well, what does character mean? It means, under Ginsburg, and I agree with it, that I have a solid set of morals and values to determine right from wrong and to have a caring attitude toward others. It's who I fundamentally am. And I think as Orthodox Christians, we have numerous examples from Christ, from the Ten Commandments, I could go on and on about what is right and what is wrong. And how do we deliver that in a caring way? So it means that we're prepared to make choices, tough choices, and to contribute in this world, that we're valuable and we have something to give. We want to help our children see themselves as a caring person. Probably one of the most important examples of that is all the bullying that goes on these days. I say to the kids that I talk to, you know who's the most important person in a bullying situation? Not the person being victimized, and not the person who's the bully. It's the person watching. The person watching can change that dynamic by speaking up and saying, hey, how come you're treating her that way? She didn't do anything to you. I can't stand here and watch you do that. That's my friend. You should see the looks on kids' faces when I tell them that. And they get it. They completely understand. And then I say, who's got the courage to do that? And in our Sunday school classrooms, we can be talking about these kinds of things easily. How do you stand up? We have in Holy Week ourselves, we have the example of Peter, who betrayed Christ. We have Judas, who completely betrayed him. People said, I don't know who you are. The going got rough, and they got going in those moments. And so we can use our own examples from our own faith to talk about what's the right thing to do. You know, what's the right thing to do, and why did that happen, and how can we learn from those examples? How can we learn from those mistakes? So we want to help our kids see themselves as a caring person who can make a difference. We want to talk to them about community. We want to talk to them about their faith, their spirituality, and we want to help them get rid of some of the racist or hateful stereotyping that's going on all around them. This is for us to do as parents. One of my other favorite of the C's is the one about contributing. Helping our children to understand that this world is a better place because they're in it. That's such a powerful message for our kids. Life is better and the world is better because you're part of it. And that means I'm going to do something for you. I can be 8 years old and I can raise money for the poor. I can be 12 years old and I can start something for someone that has nothing. I can move out of my comfort zone, and we do it by mission trips. We have all kinds of things in our faith that have kids understand, what is this all about? That I'm in this world and I'm going to make things better. What does it do? It increases their sense of competence. It increases their sense of being connected in the world. It underscores their character. So many positive things that come of that. So what do we say to kids? We say, we're lucky. We have things. There are people that don't have things. Let's see what we can do about that. And it talks about generosity. It talks about being generous, generous of spirit. So you find ways, we encourage our children, not just at Christmas, not just during the holidays, to see how can they contribute. Whether it be, could we pick 2 things we got for Christmas and give them to someone else? Could we ask for 2 less things for Christmas and take the price of those things and make a contribution to somebody somewhere? These are the kind of little lessons that we teach children to do. We also have another C called coping. Coping is like, all right, how am I going to deal with this? And if we can teach our children how you get through a tough situation, having built all those other C's, they're going to understand that when things are difficult, you can still get through them. What are your coping strategies? What do you do when it's tough? If you're very young, you have a parent help you. If you're upset, what do you do to calm yourself down? Many of the children that we see here at Akron Children's in our mental health programs are here to learn coping skills. I make a joke with kids, and I say, my favorite thing to do is walk in the woods and play the piano. And I say, do you see a piano in my office? Or do you notice any woods nearby? And they say, no, Dr. Constantinou. And I say, well, so I can't use those 2. So I need more, don't I? I can't rely on 1 or 2 coping skills because I might not be around where that works for me. And we're talking about positive coping skills, not overeating, not using drugs or alcohol, not early sexuality, not zoning out because the work is too hard. Really having them turn to the most positive possible ways. The simplest one of all, the Jesus prayer. Praying as a way of coping when you're stressed. Asking for the Lord's guidance in those moments. We need to weave our faith into this more secular presentation about what we do to build resilience. And I want to remind you all that risky behaviors, that drugs, alcohol, early sexuality, are all negative coping strategies, maladaptive coping strategies that were the easy way out, the simple way out. If we had another 2 hours, I would talk to you about the basics: diet, exercise, sleep, connecting with other people. These are all really good coping strategies, really good coping strategies. So we want kids to be empowered. We want kids to have control, to understand they have a say in their lives, that events are not just random. And when we talk about control, we talk about discipline. Actions have consequences. If you're one of those let your kids off the hook because you don't want them to cry, or you don't want them to be mad at you, or you don't want them not to be your friend, think again. Children need to say X produces Y. If I don't come to work, there isn't anybody really waiting to give me my paycheck for not showing up. If somebody doesn't do an assignment at school, the teacher isn't magically going to put an A in that book. So we teach them those things by the things that surround them first. You talk mean to people, you're about to lose a friend. And what? That's in your control. You have the power to make your life better. Well, I'm looking at my clock and seeing that's about 6 minutes after 6, and thinking that it might be a good point for me to stop at this point and look at some of the questions that have come in. And I see a few of them here. So let me see what we've got. Okay. Would I comment on pre-existing developmental traumas which can sabotage development in adolescence? So one of the things I am, you asked the right person, my area of expertise is trauma. So if children have been traumatized, severely traumatized, they need to get, and I'm not looking for business, so I'm saying this from my heart, they need to see a therapist. They need to get over it and get the strategies because the trauma may be too complex. I'm talking about sexual abuse. I'm talking about physical abuse. I'm talking about traumatic injuries. They certainly can get in your way. And if you haven't reworked and really had the chance, from the Greek word catharsis, which is to bring it out and get it out of yourself, it will not only come into your adolescence, it's going to follow you all of your life. So if you have had a real a trauma that's significant, because all traumas are how we perceive them, that's not going to go away without some professional help. So I want to go on record as saying that. Here's another one. This looks like it's all part of the same group. Building expert church capacity to circle the wagons around the babes and children of the parish when parents are themselves poorly skilled or suffer from their own traumas. Okay, I'm going to repeat this. Parents who have been traumatized, who are finding it interfering with their lives, need to get help for themselves and reach out to others so that we can, in fact, circle the wagon. But I have to speak about this again. I won't back down on my comment, which is we are our children's best role models. They're looking to us to determine how do you cope. So if I've been traumatized and I'm not going to do anything about it, what message am I giving to my child, no matter who else pitches in? Hey, this has overwhelmed me. I can't do anything about it. It's colored my life. I'm using it as a explanation or rationale for why I'm not X, Y, or Z. So I still want parents to become whole and to really work on some of these things. Okay, I'm going to leave that one. Here's a question I think is kind of a cool one. Do I support our church hiring staff to develop, coordinate, and run parenting classes based on Orthodox Christian values? I believe that in most communities around this country, the more that I work with Melissa and her center, that there are a ton of people out there that can help with this. So do I think we have to hire staff to do it? Not really. Do I think we need to encourage people to step forward and start talking about the things I'm talking about? Yes, I do. Do I have a list of qualities that the church teaches that applies to resilience? I frankly think all of the things that are on this list, from Competence, the altar boys who are learning how to assist with the liturgy, to the building character, that our church has the possibility to contribute in. I think that there's room, all of the qualities that we talk about are embedded in our faith. I also think that the teachings, if we listen to the epistle readings and we listen to the gospel readings, there's stuff in there every Sunday that we can boil down if it's a little complicated, as some are more complicated than others, and there's materials galore that we can use to help our children kind of get it. So if you think I copped out on that question, I hope you don't. Let's see. I think that that's it for our questions. So if I don't have, okay, a couple more. Another one. What can we do when we witness friends or relatives treating their children badly, swearing and abusing them? Thank you for that question. I smile because that's the toughest one of all. My experience after 35 years in this field is that if someone isn't asking you your opinion, unless this is a very tight relationship, if someone doesn't say, how do you think I'm doing as a parent, and hasn't opened that conversation, that what I would ask you to do is to treat that child differently. Spend time with that child. Show them that not all parents talk that way or act that way. And maybe approach the parent with, I'm here if you ever are feeling stressed or ever think things are too tough. I'd rather that you get close to the parent, and if you start to talk to them about their parenting when they haven't asked you, I'm worried that you'll drive a wedge. So I have a question from a good friend of mine who's saying, Dr. Constantinou, I was wondering if you could give a brief story of your experience and how you first got interested in this subject. So how did I get interested in resiliency? I've been a psychologist for over 35 years, and we always talk about pathology. We always talk about what's wrong. On the national scene in the last 10 years, resiliency has been a subject that people are talking about and asking us to think about, is how is it that some people come out of what looks like the worst situation and succeed? Some of our presidents, Abraham Lincoln, a man who grew up in true poverty and yet achieved so much. People who have come through wars, and Elie Wiesel, who was in a German concentration camp and did nothing but turn his life to the positive. We've got lots and lots of historical examples of people that did so well out of nothing. What are their strengths? What are the things that make them turn the tide? And that's where I decided that I really wanted to be on the resiliency bandwagon, because it talks about looking at life with the glass half full as opposed to the glass half empty. I don't want people saying, I was traumatized and that's why I'm the way I am. I have attention deficit disorder and that's why I do X, Y, and Z. I'm bipolar. I'm not my diagnosis. I'm so much more than that. And so I want kids and adults to think about it that way. Okay, well, if you happen to have problems with attention, what do you do to succeed? There's lots of people who need to write things down, or need to. Now I'm going to advocate for the little handheld devices, because for a kid with an attention deficit disorder, that might be a great thing. So I hope I answered that question. Okay, I now do think I'm out of questions, and just want to share with you. I'll hold it up, although it's not going to do you any good, but this is the book that I'm talking about. It's available through the American Academy of Pediatrics or on Amazon, and it's worth a read. And one of the reasons is there are sections in there where parents can ask themselves a critical question. I'll give you an example. So, sorry to put my glasses on so I can see this little piece of it. But an example would be for competence. Do I help my child focus on their strengths and build on them? When I need to point out a mistake, am I clear or focused, or do I communicate that I believe Susie always messes up? Do I help her recognize what she's got going for herself? As I protect her, does my interference send the message, I don't think you can handle this? So what's really critical is the questions, and these are also on his website if you don't want to buy the book. He forces us as parents to ask ourselves, how am I doing in building up this one of the C's? So to me, that's an exciting way for us to end, is for me to encourage you to go back to the website and to really ask yourself, if you're a parent, and many of you are, or a teacher, how am I doing in helping take those 7 C's with the children who I have an impact upon and really help them move this forward?